Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
You maybe 50. I don't know, something like that. He was a lot older than I was. And I was a lot more arrogant at that time. He was old. He might as well have been geriatric, and and so we taken. They have us. They want us to run a mile and a half. And so I'm like, all right, I knew it was going to suck. I hadn't run a mile and a half since before high school, and so I was like, this is just, it's going to be miserable, but whatever. So I'm sitting there and I'm running, and I'm, I'd taken off a lot quicker than a lot of the other people, and so I'm like, all right, just stay in front of them. I'm good, because I was also the new guy, wanted to impress different people, whatever. And so as I'm running, we get about, I want to say halfway. Right, so three quarters of a mile in, and I'm sucking wind, man. Like I'm garbage.
Right.
And I reached a spot where I'm focusing on a breath almost every step, and it was bad, and I was miserable. And out of nowhere, this geriatric dude just comes floating by. I'm talking about just
Gazelle in it.
Not gazelle. It was so much more delicate than that. Like, and that's, we joke around about it. But he runs up to me and he looks over at me. He goes, "There's beer at the end," and just gone. Like not sports. He's not Usain Bolt, but just, I'm talking about gliding. And I'm like, how in the world, this dude's got, he's got a beer belly, he's got everything else.
Right,
and I'm half his age and he is leaving me. And I think he finished like several minutes before I did.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad, man. It was embarrassing. But one of the things that we joke around about it, but it was a moment where, as even though it was a joke, it's a moment where somebody with more life experience turned and looked at somebody who was obviously struggling,
Right.
gave them a little bit of humor, and then showed them how to go on from there.
Right.
And it is breaking it. I get it's breaking it down real simple, but that's kind of what the goal of it is. And that's the same way. When you look at, like guys, our dads always ask us to hold the flashlight. That is a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And for, if your dad didn't love you, didn't have you hold that flashlight.
That's we could go with that as a sign of love.
That's where I'm going with that
Okay.
one, yeah.
All right. I have a scar from holding the
I
flashlight.
sent a video
Okay.
to my dad today of two comedians making fun of holding a flashlight for dad, and
Right.
and it's looking at the differences of how dads operate with their kids versus with their grandkids,
Right.
Because I know the things that my son gets away with at my dad's house would have been unheard of,
Right. Right.
had I done it, and so it was one of the things where, like we went to Christmas dinner at my parents' house the other day, and my son and my brother still lives with my parents. He's about to turn 16 or just turned 16, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so they're sitting there and they're playing with toys or whatever, and they got a remote control car. And so they're playing with it in the street by the house. That's understood. Like, that was understood territory. With an eyesight of your parents,
Right.
you're fine. That's how I grew up, and or at least on the streets, Now, when we lived off in Alabama, there was nothing to do.
Right. Right.
It was almost like, hey, we sacrifice you to the wolves in the
Right.
woods. We'll raise your brothers good. But anyway, so it was, hey, you stay within eyesight of your parents. And so as we're sitting outside drinking coffee, watching them play in the street, they're going down this loop or whatever, and so they get out of sight. But I know they got to come out on this other side. So they do or whatever, and then they just keep going. And now they're out of sight, but they're going towards, another road. And I'm just watching. I'm like, how far down? He goes, oh, they're going to so-and-so's house, And I was like, well, I don't know so-and-so, And I'm like, how far down is it? And he goes, it's just two houses. I'm like, they should have been back before two houses from now. And he's like, well, if you're worried about it, go check on them, whatever. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, the dad that I grew up with,
Right.
would have ended that way over here before it ever, and so it's the same thing, like you're holding a flashlight for your dad working underneath the car. Your dad's going to say some of the dumbest things in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Like my dad was not a mechanic by any means. He taught me one time my truck broke. I was 16 years old. and my truck broke down, and he taught me to climb underneath it. He said, just take a hammer and hit the starter. It'll be fine. It'll crank right up or whatever. Because that was the issue, was the starter. And he tells me this on the phone. The issue is I didn't know what a starter looked like. And for all of y'all who don't work on your vehicles, who don't understand this reference right now, if you climb underneath your vehicle, or you look in through the hood, whichever based on make and model, it could be different spots. Nowhere on that thing does it say the word starter. Just in case anybody's wondering, you either know what it is or you don't know. That's it, And so I went under there and I beat everything I could find with a hammer, because if anything, I was going to make sure the job got done. Didn't know I was creating all kinds of other issues, But I hit everything underneath that truck with a hammer, and so it was one of the things, It's I don't know where I was going with that. I just felt like that was a funny little funny,
your daddy hitting you,
funny tidbit.
telling you to hit someone with a hammer.
Yeah, my dad was not a mechanic, and so when he would be underneath underneath the hood holding a flashlight, like I don't know how in the middle of the daytime, like it could be noon, because that always seemed like when he wanted to work on vehicles was at the hottest part of the day, and the sun's bearing down on you. For some reason we need a flashlight at that point in time. I don't know. I feel like God gave you a flashlight, but whatever. I'll hold this $3 light from Walmart that's giving 3 lumens out of a double.
Somehow
double
this
A
is
battery.
great.
Right, this is helping. And if I'd have held the light differently, it might have saved something from getting stripped out or something. I don't know. But it's one of those, you got rites of passages or whatever. But there's so much knowledge, and getting back on track. There's so much knowledge that we lose because we don't pass it on, In the same sense, going back to the communication where, hey, if your wife tells you, something in a specific tone of voice, every other guy out there is like, no, you're about to mess up. In the same, it happens, at work, you get, a lot of your older guys, they don't want to pass advice down to the younger guys because they didn't learn it.
Got to learn the hard way.
Right. Well, why do we keep doing that? We make everything a lot more stressful than it needs to be, and that's one of the areas that we've got to. That's one of the areas that we've got to work on. So,
I think it goes into a lot of that old school mentality with this is how I was taught. So this is how I'm going to teach, or this is how I learned, and this is how, they're going to learn. And I'm 100% with you. We've got to reapproach, whether it's on the job, friends in their relationships or whatever. And we're not saying to anybody, go jump in your buddy's relationship. We're not saying all of that. But if they call you up and they're like, I'm about to go buy this car, because I know if we had been friends back then, you'd have been like, I'm going to go buy this Camaro. And I'm like, she said, yeah. And if you'd be like, oh, she said, do what you want. I'm like, whoa, hold up. How did she say that? What was the context of the conversation? As guys who've been through
it. On a motorcycle, by the way. She ain't said, I don't think she said yes. She said something, but it wasn't yes. By the end of it, it'll be what it is.
It wasn't no for sure, but it definitely wasn't yes. I know for a fact it was not yes.
I think it might have been not right now, but I'm talking about later, so that'll work.
Right. We were talking about in that moment.
Right.
But that right there is precisely how we do that. We know that she was like, not right now, and you took that as, I'm sure that, when I show up with it, and she's gonna be like, what are you doing? And you're like, you said not right now, but that was then, and this is now.
Right.
So it wasn't right now. It's now, now. And it's who we are. Like, I think it's how we're geared. And that's why it's our responsibility to look at our sons and look at our buddies who are a little bit younger than us, or maybe starting out new in relationships. And it's, your 19, 20-year-olds as dads or male role models, whatever your position is in a person's life. Step in and help him out. Like, if he's coming in talking about my wife is constantly yelling at me, it's not a matter of what are you doing wrong. And that's one of the stereotypes we see on all of the social media platforms is, my wife keeps complaining and yelling at me. What are you doing wrong? That's not the answer. It,
No. I feel like it could be. It could be.
sometimes,
Let's be clear
some,
about your answer then. If you're
some
giving one, let's not give
sometimes.
some bull crap where we're going to get canceled for giving wrong information. All of a
Okay,
sudden, the dude
okay,
goes home. He's like, "I'm not the problem. You're the problem, Betsy," and
right.
then gets his teeth rocked out of his mouth.
Right, right. So sometimes we are the problem, okay? But sometimes men can be in bad relationships. But ask yourself, as a man, when you're in these situations where there's an argument or whatever, I found it's easier for me to take a breath, step outside. I'm not leaving the house, like, unless it's like
Hmm.
a violent situation. I've never had that particular problem. But I step outside, I calm down, and I process this fight in my head, all right? Because, one, I don't want to say something because I've done it before. I don't want to say something I can't take back. Because the moment you tell a woman that her, cooking is terrible, or whatever the case may be, that's going to resonate with her in a hurtful way, you can't unsay it.
Right.
So I remove myself from the situation, and then I readdress it in a different manner. My biggest point in a conversation with a significant other is, if I can't say it calmly, and I won't say respectfully, but if I can't say it calmly without raising my voice, I don't need to be having a conversation right now. I know that emotionally I'm so upset, or still upset, to the point that I shouldn't have that
Right.
conversation. And with significant others, it's the same aspects as it is with work relationships and friend relationships and things like that. When you get to a point where you're that upset, whether it's at work or it's whatever, I know in one case we had, and I'm gonna try to word this in a way that comes out properly, but we had responded to back up somebody, and they had done something by themselves and put themselves in a point that they didn't realize somebody had run away from the vehicle. They didn't tell anybody where they were at. We had to go find them, and then they stopped communicating on the radio, and they'd positioned themselves almost side by side with a vehicle without knowing if the person in the vehicle was armed or if the person that ran was armed. Um, and we got there real quick, but it didn't really help that situation. And I know that when I got there, like, my my level of aggression was at 100, because I'm like, one, officer safety. Two, we've told this person numerous times, stop being stupid. But I knew emotionally, like, I was at 100, and it was quick. You, as my friend, knowing that this isn't the way that I typically would communicate with somebody right off the bat, like, hey, we got this. And I was just like, okay, I gotta walk away. I'm clearly too upset, but I respect your opinion. And that's in my brain. When you say things that get my attention, I step away. It's the same thing with communicating with other people. I know that when I get to that emotional level, I got to step back. And that's where a lot of guys, especially our younger guys, are making that mistake in their relationships, is they're allowing certain things to trigger them into responding at 100%, emotional charge, instead of, there's a problem, be it finances, cleanliness of the house, or taking care of the kids. We're taking it as personal insults.
Right.
And she may come off that way, but I promise that's not her intentions. Her intention is to bring a problem to your table and say, hey, look, we need to make more money to pay these bills, or I just need a hand every now and then with the kids, or once in a while, can you help me out by making dinner or taking the trash out or whatever? Instead, because she's so upset, she approaches it in a wrong way, or in an emotional charge way. Maybe not every time. We as men immediately take that as a pride thing. We're like, oh, so now I'm useless because I go to work all day and I don't clean, or I don't pay bills, or whatever the case may be. One of the ways that we men can help ourselves with that communication is, if you know immediately your feelings are hurt, or you need to you feel you need to respond in an outburst or be louder than that person, take that half step back and readdress it when you've calmed down, or when you try to see it from her perspective. And that might help with some of our communication conundrums.
Well, I think so. The other part of it is, and I'm saying this from a standpoint. One of the things that we fought with early in my marriage is I would go to work. We got married while we were in college, and so I'd go to class, go to work. She would go to class, she would go to work, and I was working night shifts at the time. She was doing a couple other little odd jobs or whatever.
Just for the record, everybody, I know I was on my phone. I was turning the heater down.
Yeah, he's been burning me out for the last hour.
I'm getting toasty up here.
But I would go to work, come home, take my dirty clothes, put them in a pile or whatever, go take a shower, go to bed, get up, drink some coffee or make some breakfast, whatever. Put the plates near the sink, then go to work. Well, she was just busy as I was, right? And so we'd come home and we just see, you look and you're like, there's clothes all over dirty clothes all over the place. There's dirty dishes all over the place. The floors haven't been swept, haven't been mopped, haven't been vacuumed. All this is going on, and she would look, and she would start doing a stomp through the house, and you could tell by the footsteps. It was like, all right, here we go, and then and so I'm like, all right, what's wrong with you? And it's that's where maybe some of you older guys could have been like, hey, that's not how you word that,
right.
Because when I said, hey, what's wrong with you, that's when it happened.
Yeah.
So we wound up having a fight over dishes not being done and the house is a mess. We're not taking care of where we're living and all this other stuff. And then fast forward a couple months, dishes aren't done, laundry's not done, floor's not clean, house is dirty. We have the same argument, right? And that cycle went on all the way up until recently. Like, it's a constant thing.
Right.
And it's because you get so distracted. I get, hey, you're distracted and all this other stuff, but at the same time, she's not the only one who can do dishes and laundry and all this other stuff in the house. And so that's one of the things, and it's sometimes we get busy and we don't, I would say we haven't fought about it so much lately. It's just been more of the things, hey, it happened and we fix it, because we both know we got different stuff going on. We're rebuilding a house. Like, you got a lot of stuff going on that's taking time away from doing that, but we also know, hey, it's got to get done. That being said, for the first several years of my marriage, and by several I mean the first decade of my marriage, I just didn't learn. I didn't learn the lesson. But what I also didn't do is I also didn't say, yeah, you're right in the arguments. Instead, it was a fight back and forth, because I was refusing to admit that, that she was wrong or she was right and I was wrong or whatever. Instead, it was just a fight just to win, and so I had to change how I viewed that. And I think that's what a lot of guys have got to do is, hey, when she's pointing stuff out, it's not saying, she's not calling you a piece of shit. Instead, what she's bringing a problem up, a problem that she knows she didn't do the laundry and stuff too.
Right.
The fact is, it hasn't been done. She's been just, for a lot of people, everybody in the relationship or both people in the relationship work full-time jobs. So it's not fair for me, if I log 50 hours a week to be like, oh, I'll work 50. You only work 40 hours a week. You need to take care of everything and all.
Right.
No, that's childish, man.
So with that, do you think maybe the takeaway for the ladies in this is you can have a valid point and argument, but it's how you bring the fight to the table?
So I'm going to say this. I struggle enough telling one woman what I expect or how things need to be done.
He's going to cop out.
And this is a podcast for guys. So I'm going to say maybe the guys need to take a moment back, take a little bit of humility, and go ahead and do the dishes, do the laundry, stuff like that. Now, that being said, if they get around where, hey, for the last year, they've done all the laundry, all the dishes, it's a one-way street, by all means, have a conversation.
Have a conversation, right.
But you can't really say anything if she's doing all of it.
Right.
She comes at you about it because you haven't done any of it, and you're like, but my feet hurt. You see, it's kind of a foolish argument there.
So my question for you is, do you think after the honeymoon phase wears off that men stop viewing the significant other as a romance and more of a friendship? And what I mean by that is, if there was something that I was doing, stomping around, moving, whatever, and you were to look at me and be like, what's wrong with you? I wouldn't be offended by that because I'm a guy. I'd be like, I'm pissed off. This is what I got going on. Whatever.
I don't know. I think that's a topic, maybe for another day. But I don't. I don't know there. I think a majority, and this is basing it, one off of how I was in the beginning of my marriage, where it lasted, but it wasn't successful in my opinion. Like we fought like cats and dogs. We had moments where it was great, and then we had moments where we were at each other's throats and miserable.
Right.
So I'm basing it off of that, and I'm basing it off of going to for the last several years going to dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of houses where husbands and wives who aren't getting divorced, are arguing with each other over dumb things.
Right.
A lot of it, I'm going to say, is guys need to change how they act, or how they respond to things. I'm not saying take a because I'm also somewhat traditional. I believe in I don't believe in that guys should be weak in the house. I
Right.
believe we are built to be protectors and providers and all this other stuff. So by all means, you have a role to play. But that being said, I cook, things like that. I don't believe in your stereotypical gender roles.
Right. Right. Right.
But I think a lot of guys take a lazy approach, and if the house is filthy, maybe that's not the time to be playing Call of Duty, for
Right.
4 hours, maybe, so it's one of those things. If
It's not beneath you to step into the traditional female role and help with the
right,
dishes and the
right,
laundry and
give,
everything
give
else.
her give her a helping hand.
Right.
And again, if you start doing all of it, she's never doing any of it. Have a conversation,
Right.
Pull the old rope a dope,
Right. We're not talking about if you did it, every day for a week straight and nothing happened. You're talking about a longevity situation
right.
where it's you notice you're the only one going to work a full-time job and cooking dinner and doing the dishes, and you're doing it on a regular basis, and you're not receiving that help in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more of a helping hand type thing. So I think that would be for today's episode. The takeaway is going to be work on communication.
Right.
Take and stop being be a good friend. Take and reach out. Look at those context clues, and take and go deeper to see where your friends are
Right.
at. And they may say, "Hey, shut up, leave me alone." At that point, hey, you're still their friend.
Yep.
You know,
And for men in relationships, if your immediate reaction to her complaint or her concern, whatever she brings up, is to immediately go into an argumentative standpoint or into a fight or flight situation, take that dial back. Know in your brain that at one point you truly loved, respected, and wanted to be with that person for
right.
the rest of your lives. Whether it's a marriage or you're just starting out dating, there's a moment where you care enough about that person that you wanted to be in that position with them. Take a step back. Maybe you heard incorrectly. Maybe, she said something that was a little aggressive. Take that time to step back and be like, hey, let's start this conversation over again. I want to hear what you have to say, but I don't want to be aggressive in that. Can we have a conversation and not an argument? Take that step back, I think that's pretty much what we covered on this one, right?
I think so.
Be a good friend and be.
So one of the things, and this is just kind of when I was growing up, I was I much like every other guy out there, puberty hit, right?
Right.
And that was signified by the voice change.
Yep.
Hands down, the worst moment of a guy's life.
Yes.
is
Yes,
going
sir.
through the right. The voice cracks. It's got a weird squeak to it.
Right.
And your parents are calling you, say you sound like a squeaky toy. But the other issue is your brain is so hyperactive, you don't shut up. You're still just like that 6-year-old who's talking about Minecraft or whatever.
Right, right.
Just going to town. But you're like, I swear, if you start looking around and when you see prepubescent guys going through the voice change, you're like, I wish he would just shut up. Like it was
Right,
cute
right.
for about 3 seconds and now it's over. And so my dad, and this is it's. I'm not knocking him. It is, my dad's not the smartest man in the world. He's got very, very, very little patience.
Right.
Or at least he did raising us. And so he decided it was a great idea to have 4 boys,
Right.
And so,
right.
he couldn't stop at one. See, hey, do I like kids being kids and all this other stuff? He's like, no, I'm going to swing for the fences and have 4 of us. Well, then he also took custody of two of my cousins. So now we had 6 of us, and we're all different ages, ranging in different ages or whatever.
Right.
Well, I was going through puberty, and my dad told me one of the things. We're sitting in the back of a Dodge Caravan, and I'm sitting there talking, and I'm talking. I didn't think I was being obnoxious. Evidently, I was. It's a tomato potato type thing.
Right.
They have their version of the story. I have mine, and so I'm sitting there talking, and my dad loses it. He goes, why don't you just shut up? He goes, I hope when you get older, you have 13 kids, and they're just like you, so you can have to deal with this. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I feel like if I had 13 rock stars for kids, then, we'll be good to go.
Right.
But I knew what he meant. It was I was being obnoxious. I was being arrogant, along with I sounded like a trumpet that come from Goodwill. And so he's sitting there talking to me, and lo and behold, little did he know I was going to pull the old, switcheroo, and I only had one kid, so I only got to deal with it
Joke's
once
on
for now.
you.
Joke's on you, Dad.
Question.
So that was, yeah,
Who hit puberty first, you or Matthew?
I did. I think it was probably the same time. I don't know. I didn't keep track of that.
So he is the better brother.
So on this note, guys, thanks for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. I know we kind of got off topic a little bit and scatterbrained, but it is what it is. Trying to put all this together. Do us a favor. Send us an email. Coffee&theBull at yahoo.com. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to hear about. Stop being lazy. Some of y'all are listening to this and you're like, man, it'd be nice if we could hear what their thoughts are on such and such. Well, we don't know because we're not in your brain. So send us an email. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know if you think we're doing a great job. If you think John's shirt looks stupid because he shops at Baby Gap. Whatever.
That's how
it
it can not work out.
Right. Whatever it is, let us know. We'd like to just have
like
conversations with you. That's all it's going to be. We're not going to be rude. We're not going to put your stuff on the podcast unless
What's
you
wrong
want
with my
us to.
shirt?
Yeah. So shoot us an email, coffeeandthebull at yahoo.com. In the meantime, hit us up on all the platforms we're on, all of them.
Yep.
So find us on there. Hit the like, subscribe, share button, all those different things. And for now, unless you got something else, toodaloo.
Stupid.